There are people who have a cartoon mentality about violence. This is the kind of mentality that gets people killed while trying to do things they saw in a cartoon, believing it would be harmless and cute. Sometimes people don't register themselves as a threat to others. They may feel that a physical imbalance they have renders any attempt at violence on their part as just a trivial expression, like, I couldn't hurt you if I wanted to. It makes them the aggressor. They think their attacks are harmless and don't warrant a consequence. It's a dangerous mentality. You can justify a spontaneous attack with a weapon. Some anecdotal examples would be a wife who responds to a vulgar joke by hitting her husband on the head with a full jar of peanuts, or a wife who hits her husband on the back with an iron. Kinetic energy leveraged and concentrated like that can kill a person. There's a view in which it's believed that words can legitimately be met with violence, even if there was no physical threat or escalation leading to it. A person who thinks that they can't hurt you, their capabilities and level of emotional intelligence should be considered. Like, a small child obviously doesn't know any better, but is also not capable of doing as much damage as a grown adult who doesn't understand the consequences of violence because they never felt they were good enough at it. When a person could be hurt by words this much, there's an identification with thoughts that renders insults to the conceptual self as being on par with a physical assault. It's responded to accordingly. It's aggravated by the cultivation of identity. It's the identity that's offended. It can be attacked, and if that with which one is identified is attacked, it can generate a physical response. It's a pathology. The more forms and causes with which there is identification, and the more strongly so, the more and greater the reactions to the world's inevitable assaults on these idols of self. The cultivation of identity inverts the energy body as energy is pulled into the lower centers. Constant triggering of the amygdala to unwanted ideas precludes the natural state and instead yields suffering. The vibrational level of the energy body, when lowered, attracts thoughts that fit with that state. It's like how different fish can be more commonly found at certain depths, and they stratify. Thought content relative to vibration works the same way. When the energy ascends in position and vibrational level, it's allowed because there are no offended parties to whatever appears. In the absence of judgments made against the present, the energy body ascends. The thought loop is no longer refreshed by the energy that follows attention. If memory is not revisited, it loses a lot of its magnetism and power to push buttons. It takes engagement of attention to do that. A thought without attention is nothing. The institutions that control the content to which we're exposed understand that people accept ideas on a first come, first served basis, and that it can feel like a little death happens when one idea is crushed by the truth. People are loyal to ideas that the editorial staff at a handful of conglomerates decided to put in the minds of the public. Whatever norm is most ubiquitous in the formative years will shape the loyalties, and those positions are unlikely to be rejected due to countervailing argument. But if the ideas themselves cause enough suffering, they may be investigated and their connection with suffering revealed, and then a search to find the root cause of suffering. Suffering can cause the utility of thoughts to be questioned, and then consideration of their role in suffering can be made. The content with which there's identification need not even be factually untrue for it to cause suffering. The sufferer can be absolutely correct on points of fact. So it's not that. It's not whether or not what's held in mind is true. It's that the delusion that anything the self perceives as self can be what it claims to perceive it, to be what claims to perceive it. Nothing the self perceives as self can be what claims to perceive it. All the reactions are predicated on a belief that something appearing in awareness is the self that perceives it. That view changes the way that reality is experienced when it's an automatic view that what appears in awareness is dependently originated phenomena. And that none of it is the self that perceives it. For all these things are in motion and changing, and they're impermanent, and they have different qualities, whereas what's aware of them is only perceiving. The nature of human weakness is recognized when events are viewed apart from the lens of positionality. People become so identified with some non-self thing that they use it as a way to say who is human and who is not. In the aggregate, people don't change, only the programming that's shaping their expression of consciousness and thus vibrational level. The way to break the spell of the conditioning is not to bend it with countervailing ideas, but rather to reveal its non-self nature and no longer be moved by it.